aceea sunt tot programul după timp, respectiv nu o să facem excepții mari decât faptul că astăzi este miercuri, nu este joi. De obicei, ultima prieteni, chiar niște colegi deja glumeau că noi știm că e joi, numai după faptul că este Startup Academy.
Sincer, da, eu am spus ceva s-au schimbat cu locurile în viață.
Avea. Trebuie să vă deprindeți că deja Startup Academy nu o să mai aibă loc în 2018. Dar cu vești bune o să revenim cu noi programe în 2019. Vasile, vadă implicat în echipă. Ok, cu alte anunțuri o să revenim pe parcurs și probabil la sfârșit de zi. Eu am onoarea să-l invit pe colegul nostru, pe Matt, despre care vreau să fac o introducere. Deci, Matt este unul dintre primii, probabil, reprezentanți în Moldova care a început să vorbească despre Lean Startup. Asta a fost, mă zic, tradus din engleză în rusă sau română? La rusă. Matt, de fapt, este original din America, dar în cadrul unui program deja s-a stabilit aici și noi suntem bucuroși să avem așa o minte lucidă care poate să ne ajute în cadrul programelor care le desfășurăm, în special în domeniul antreprenoriatului. Are o experiență foarte vastă în susținerea diferitor produse. A fost implicat recent într-un startup care voi ați fost asistați. Deci el a fost câștigătorul de anul trecut și a fost în Elveția. Dacă o să vreți, o să îl întrebați.
A câștigat milionul, da?
Poftim?
A câștigat milionul, da?
A câștigat competiția locală, dar a beneficiat de foarte mult cunoștințe care ar putea să șorească cu voi. Deci, cum o să aibă loc modulul acesta? Astăzi, Matt împreună cu Roman, care o să revină mai târziu, o să ducă acest modul cu partea teoretică. Sâmbătă o să lucrați individual cu încă câțiva mentori, pe două componente, partea de investors deck, adică cum structurați informația care o arătați la investitor, și prezentarea propriu-zisă. Pentru că prezentarea este imaginea și ulterior, dacă cineva este interesat în detalii, vă arătați multe informații. Structura o să fie dată astăzi, sâmbătă o să fie mentorii și deja săptămâna viitoare revenim cu ziua exactă când o să facem repetiție pentru demodel, în care iarăși mai o să fie implicat.
Can you change the presentation? And I should use this. She should be able to present in așa? Ok.
Yes, we will switch to English.
Vorbești și română și rusă?
Da, da. Un pic. Nu foarte bine în română, dar eu am soțiază moldovană. Și eu am lucrat și trăit în Gaguzia. Deci, da, eu am studiat limba rusă, sau deja 7 ani, mă rog.
Asta e foarte rar când și, ok, engleza se asociază cu română cumva. Dar cu rusă asta e...
Totul depinde de cât de tare vrei.
Cât de tare vrei, da. Și asta e reală.
Cât de puternic se ține, da.
So I should use the... Trebuie să... I suppose with the microphone. Așa?
Dar s-o văd pe acum acolo.
They said for the video, I need to use a microphone.
Merge? Raz, va, raz.
Okay. Thank you, Mary, for the introduction. I will be speaking in English today. If you have questions, we will have time, a long time, at the end of the presentation for questions. Feel free to raise your hand and ask questions in Romanian or in Russian, and I'll probably answer you in English, but I might answer in a different language if I can. Today, the topic I was given to talk to you guys about is pitching, and specifically, we're going to be talking about investor pitching, because that's what you are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, is preparing your investor pitch for demo day. There's a number of different types of pitches. Roman, a little bit later today, he's going to be talking about those different types of pitches, more than just investor pitches. But for the next hour and a half that I have with you, I'm going to be focusing on an investor pitch. Investor pitch. Now, I want to start with the question. What is the goal of an investor pitch? What's the goal of an investor pitch? This is where you contribute your thoughts.
To raise money.
To raise money, okay? Other ideas or agreement with that?
To capture the attention of the,
Yep, it's approved.
investor.
Okay, to get the attention of investors, okay? Any other thoughts or agreement with what we've already heard? One or two more people. I'm going to stand here until we get two more thoughts, either agreement or a new idea.
Present what you made for all this period.
To present what you made for the period, okay? To present what you made for the period. Okay, good. So for the demo day, the idea of the demo is that you are presenting what you have accomplished, what you've learned over the period of time. That's absolutely correct. For an investor pitch, and I was asked to specifically talk to you about the investor pitch, it's going back to the first question that we heard, or the first comment is being able to get something from the investors. I would stipulate that it's not always money. I've been a part of many investor pitches and gone to investor pitch competitions, and sometimes what people receive that's most important is not money, it's something else. But I agree. The goal of what we're going to be talking about for the next hour and a half is how can we get something from the investors, or the people that are going to be in the judging audience, okay? So, my name is Matt. I've had a number of experiences here in Moldova with pitching. As Mary said, this was taken last year at the Sea Stars Summit, where we won with our product and company called Baby Moon. And it's a Moldovan startup that was created here. It's now in the Netherlands. Before that, I came, as Mary said, about 7 years ago, working with entrepreneurs that were trying to implement lean startup methodology in Moldova. I came originally through a program called Peace Corps, US Peace Corps. And I've had the opportunity to be helping people raise money and raise investment. I've been a part of a couple of different companies that are raising investment, and we've received money from investors. I've also been a part of a investment company, and we've invested into local businesses, some tech businesses, but mostly agriculture and production businesses. And at the very moment, I'm the Moldovan officer, general manager for a marketing strategy and web production company here. So I've got a number of different things that I've done in the past 7 years. But one thing that, for good or bad, I'm here today to talk to you about is investment pitching, because I've been a part of now probably in the ballpark of 40 different 40 different pitching competitions over the past 7 years. There's a lot of different competitions throughout the Global Entrepreneurship Week, through TechWorld there's a few, through not Rockstar, what's it called? Rocket community events. And so each one of those different events have different criteria. And what I've done today with the presentation is we focus it specifically on the TechWorld Academy criteria. Who here has already received the criteria that you will be judged upon for the pitch competition? Good, okay, so that's 2 of our slides. We're going to be going down into the details of how the judges are going to be selecting you, how they're going to be selecting the winners of the pitch competition. So I'm going to start going through the process. We're going to go over these topics right now. If you have questions throughout the process, please let me know. I'm going to try to leave about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So if you have something that can wait to the end, feel free to hold it, but please be making notes and let me know what you want to talk about. We're going to start by clarifying what is the purpose. We talked about the goal, but what's the purpose of an investor pitch? Then we're going to talk about the different criteria that would be involved in your investor pitch deck. And we'll talk about the structure to use, how you might be selecting what slides to include, what slides not to include, what's going to be the structure of the day when you're coming here to present your pitches. Then we're going to talk about a few key details, what to do, what not to do, and then we'll take questions at the end. Okay? Good. So the goal we already talked about was getting something from the investor. Now, sometimes that means that you're going to be getting money from an investor, but oftentimes in these scenarios with an accelerator, you might not be ready for money by demo day. I assume some of you are going to be in that position where you haven't quite yet got your products ready for the market, you haven't quite yet gotten sales, but you still want to use this opportunity to get something from the investors or the judges that are going to be in the room. And for you, and I've been in this situation with Baby Moon and with other companies, for us, sometimes what we really needed was to be very clear about getting, my emojis got messed up, but sometimes we need to be very clear about getting time. We want to be able to get a meeting with an investor. We want to be able to pull information and knowledge from that investor about what they know about the industry, or feedback about our go-to-market strategy, how we're going to be using certain channels to advertise our products. And we want to not get money from one of the judges, but we want to have them agree to a 30-minute meeting or a 60-minute Skype call afterward. But it's something very concrete. Maybe you need a connection. That's supposed to be a businesswoman emoji. Maybe you need to be able to get connected to someone from an industry that would help you understand your market better. Maybe you need to get a connection to someone who has an interest in investing in your industry. It's possible, for instance, your product is related to helping supermarkets be able to categorize their products inside the store. Maybe none of those judges that are going to be in front of you 2 weeks from now have experience with creating software for supermarkets, but they have a friend who does invest in those types of companies. Well, then you're going to want to be very specific about the type of connections that you need. But the goal is to get something specific. And by the end of today's presentation, I'm going to ask for all of you to write down or make a mental note in your head. What is going to be your goal? We also call it the ask. What is going to be your ask in the investor pitch that you're going to be providing 2 weeks from now? So if that's the goal, what is your purpose? What is the reason why you would get up and present your business? What is the purpose for an investor pitch? What you want is to get something from the investor, what's the purpose of the pitch deck?
Get people's attention towards your products and what you're developing.
Perfect. Other ideas. Get attention about get other people to pay attention to your product, to know about your product. What else? Money, right? But how are you going to use your presentation to get money?
I will show them my needs. I need server, I need a location, where to...
You'll show them your needs, but why would they give you money? Because you have a need and they're nice people?
No, I'll show them, first of all, comes to the red, it's showing the problem, showing the solution, how we solve this solution, what we need, and what we receive from this kind. And at the end, since it would be nice to show them that we already have someone who wish to buy our product, who wish to help us to increase.
So all of that I'm agreeing with, and we're going to get into that. That's the right structure. 100% agree with you. But if I'm an investor, you tell me all of that, what makes me want to invest in you? Profitability, maybe.
Reason to grow? Or...
Yeah, okay.
It will connect almost a lot of companies with one program.
Yeah, so maybe there's a personal connection that they have to the business. Yeah. Did I see another hand? Yeah.
I would divide the proposal into segments. Let's say the first one would be to demonstrate for the investor that the business that we bring can add value to the society on the one hand. On the other one, as they are the potential investors, should be that it's going to be a positive ROI, revenue of investment. So basically, I know that they have to do positive things in general. Does it make sense?
It does. It does. So you took one step further. You'll see it on the next slide. What I'm going to say is the purpose, and it's in what was originally said and in a little bit of what we had, is that you need to be able to increase the interest in your product. There are different investors that are going to have different reasons why they would be interested in your product or in your business. There we go. But you need to be able to create interest, increase interest in your product or in your business. Go ahead.
What about the advocacy element, advocating for a particular issue? And
Exactly. And I would say that if the investor is interested in an issue and you talk about how you're going to be solving that issue, it would increase their interest. Now, the reason I included this slide, it might sound redundant, is that oftentimes when you are getting in front of a group of investors, we don't stop to think about what is our investor interested in. Are we even talking to the right investor? Are we talking to the right person? Who are we talking to? There are some startups that I've worked with that use the same exact investor pitch deck every single event or competition that they go to. And that's usually not very useful. It's not very effective in helping them to get a goal, either get money, get time, or get a connection from an investor. The reason is because your investors are going to have, or let's call them the judges in this scenario. 2 weeks from now, you'll be pitching to some judges. Those judges are going to have different interests. Some of them might have some social interests. They want to reduce global warming. Some people might want to increase the profitability of their portfolio, right? Some people might want to be known amongst their friends as the person who invests in startups. But you have to have an idea of who those people are that are going to be on the jury, in the investor panel, and be able to craft your message, craft the story that you use based on the people that are in the room. So, big point number one, make sure that before you go present your investor pitch to someone, that you know who is going to be in the room, not even just the organization, know the people that are going to be sitting in front of you, do a little bit of research on their background, know what they like, what they don't like, if they previously invested in something, and then be able to craft every time you stand in front of your pitch, or every time you stand in front of your investors, craft your pitch deck to fit the people in the room. Now, what are the reasons, some of the reasons that people would be interested? We've already covered them. Financial return, that's typically the main one that you will come across in these contexts, that people are going to want to make money off of their investment. If they put $10,000 into your company, and you are receiving that as an IT startup from Eastern Europe, most of the time the investors will want to make about $50,000 back, 5 times back, over the course of 3 to, let's call it 2 to 5 years, over the course of 2 to 5 years. There are some investors that want 10 times back in 5 years. There are some investors that will want 2 times back in 3 years. It depends on the person. But generally, people are going to want somewhere around 5 times the money back in 2 to 5 years. That's my experience with investors and organizations that do investment in this region. Now, if you go and you have the opportunity to compete in a pitch competition in the United States, most of the investors are going to want, let's say you're in New York, they're going to want 10 times back in 3 to 5 years. If you go to Silicon Valley, they're going to want 60 times back. These are actual numbers. They expect that they will find a unicorn, or they expect that they're going to find a company that's going to create a massive, massive return in a short period of time. So A lot of people talk about the disadvantages that Eastern European startups have. One of the advantages is that there's a little bit more realistic expectation for your financial return. But if you are going to be standing in front of an investor that cares about a financial return, you have to make sure that that is mentioned on several points of your investor pitch. If you're standing in front of a room of people that will only be allowed to give you money if you will return them more money in the future, you have to know how you are going to make them money, and you have to convince them that you will make them money. You might have a company that's going to be saving thousands of lives. You might have a company that's going to be reversing the cycle of global warming. But if you can't talk to those people, convince them that they're going to be making money off of that, you're not going to convince them. You're not going to achieve your goal or the purpose of the investor pitch. So if someone is looking to have a financial return, explain to them what's called an exit strategy. Exit strategy. If an investor asks, what's your exit? It means, how do I as an investor make money from investing in you? Okay? There's usually 3 different ways that an investor makes money. If you're talking about an IT startup, which most of us, I believe, are working on IT startups, usually the investor is going to make money when you sell your company to a bigger company. It's usually what happens. You start growing, the investor puts $10,000 into your company, the value, worth, sense of your company increases, you sell the company to Google a few years later for a higher valuation, and the investor makes their money back plus some. The other way is that you can go public. This is something that doesn't usually happen around here, but you can start selling shares of your business, and the investor will make their money back. The third way is, and this is with more traditional businesses, not with IT startups, that you can pay dividends. So at the end of the year, you pay a portion of your profits back to the investors. But if you're standing in front of a room, and you will be a couple weeks from now when you do your investor pitch, and people ask you, how are you going to make me money? You need to tell them one of those 3 ways. Either, I'm going to grow my company and sell it. I'm going to go public one day, and I have an idea of how I'm going to grow my company and go public. Or, I'm going to have a lot of profits. I'm going to run a profitable company, and I'm going to pay you a percentage of those profits. Okay? Next point. If the investor is interested in a strategic alliance. We see this sometimes with companies that are going to be investing in startups. Does anyone have an idea or an example of what it might mean for a company to invest in a startup because they're interested in a strategic alliance?
YouTube was sold by a strategic alliance.
And how was that a strategic alliance?
Google observed that YouTube had a lot of subscribers and a lot of followers, and after that they proposed to buy this company.
Good. So this is a good example. I don't fully remember the background on YouTube, but typically with companies like this, what they would do is Google will find YouTube, the startup YouTube, very interesting. So they will first make an investment into YouTube. They won't first buy the company. They'll make an investment into YouTube. And they want to see how the founders are going to use that money. And if they use it well, if they grow the way that they're supposed to grow, then Google will buy YouTube. Okay? So a more local example might be, let's say that you have an IT startup that is helping people find the closest Wi-Fi access. You have an app that finds the closest Wi-Fi access in Moldova. Maybe StarNet will come to you and they'll say, I'll give you $10,000. I want to see you scale this to the remote regions of Moldova where we don't have a very large presence. And if you're able to scale your company, because there's a strategic alliance or a strategic partnership that's of the interest of StarNet, well then you can convince them to invest, You can grow and maybe one day have an exit, which would be sell your company to StarNet. Make sense? Strategic alliance means you look for people that have a similar interest in you. Okay? Our company, Baby Moon, when we were looking for money, we were related to the health tech sphere. So we looked at some pharmaceutical companies that might be interested in investing in us because our product could give them data that they needed. So you invest in us, we create some type of strategic or exclusive partnership where you get data that no one else will have. Okay, so think about how can you create a strategic alliance? Who are the companies that would be interested in what you're doing? The next one is social good. We talked about it. So if you are in a competition, and there are some of these in Moldova that are related to, for instance, social entrepreneurship. They want to be creating jobs for Moldovan at-risk youth. Well, then you can present how you are going to create that good for your country. There are other competitions here that are related to green energy. You can present your business and how you're going to be reducing the carbon emissions in Moldova. But my caution here is that if you are standing in front of investors that are primarily interested in the financial return, be careful of putting too much social good into your presentation. I've done that before and it's backfired. People, sometimes, some investors will question how serious you are if you put too much of a focus on what social good you're doing versus how much money you're going to make them. From my experience, is the better path is to, if someone is interested in social or financial return, you prove that you're going to have a financial return, you're going to help them make money. And then after you've already proven that, you have a conversation with them. You say, by the way, we're going to be helping save lives. We're going to be doing this good thing in your community. And it's icing on the cake. It's something that's nice to have. It's not required. And then the last reason that does exist is fun. Sometimes some investors, what we call angel investors, which are individuals who don't have a company, they don't have a portfolio, but they use their own money to invest. Sometimes these angel investors will want to enjoy the process of sitting on a board, and they want to invest some money in your company and then oversee. They want to advise you on how you should be growing the company. They want to connect you with their friends. They want to be able to tell their kids, hey, look, I'm hip and cool too. I just invested in a tech company, even though I have no idea about technology. And there are some of these investors that will just give you money in order to have fun. They're pretty rare, and it's not always a great thing. Because if someone doesn't know what they're doing and they give you money, and you give them some control of your business, well, then it can cause difficulty as you run the business, if they are influencing the decisions you make. So be careful there, if someone is only investing for fun. Okay? All right. Oh, thank you. Good. All right, so those are some of the points of interest of why someone might be interested in your presentation. So take a step back. You said the goal is to get something from the investors. In order to get something, you have to present how you are interesting. You have to raise interest. And this was a list of different ways. Back. Let's see. There we go. You get to see my whole presentation now. It's not very long, as you see. Only a couple more slides. All right, so these are the different reasons that people might be interested in your company. Any questions here about why we're talking about this, how you're going to be using this information to craft your investment pitch 2 weeks from now, but also in the future as you grow the company? No? Okay, we'll keep going.
Sorry, can you please give a couple of more examples for the strategic alliance?
Yes, and I'll give the examples in the next slide, which is called creating interest. So how do you create this interest? Very practically. So I'll jump to strategic alliance since you just asked. What type of business do you have? What type of startup?
We want to implement, we want to combine the possibility of the food supply chain starting with the producers of the meat, and you integrate it with a system of blockchain. So till the end, we have for the customers, for the consumers, we have an application on the phone, and each consumer of meat can scan the product, this pack, let's say the barcode, and he would have a couple of fields with the most important information about the traceability, starting from the farm, getting to the abattoir, also in English. Slaughterhouse. Thank you so much. The processors and the retailer.
Okay. Okay. Good. And what companies benefit from that? What big businesses benefit from that?
In my opinion, these are the producers, the big companies of meat, like Filetti, Rogo, Vegas.
Okay. Let's talk about Filet, for instance. What could you provide them?
I see it as one of the top parts for their marketing strategy.
Marketing.
Because we've already met with them, they told us that they invest 1% of their early revenue in the marketing, which is like about 60, 70K per year. And I truly believe that they would go from this 1% to take another 10 and make like an early yearly abonnement. Subscription,
yeah.
Exactly. For the solution, in order to demonstrate to their consumers that they actually have quality food.
Great. So I think you just told me the pitch. In terms of what that means for creating interest at a practical level, let's say in a couple weeks from now you have one of the managers from that company that are here. What I would do is be very, very clear in your presentation how you solve a problem for the customer, how this can benefit a meat production company, and then in the ask, which is usually the last slide, something that you're asking for, you can say, we are willing to offer a 1-year exclusive deal with one Moldovan meat producer in order to provide them exclusive access. We will only provide them access to our platform. In exchange, we need $15,000. Right? So that would be an example of a strategic alliance. You say, if you invest in us, we will give you the head start. We'll give you 1 year free, exclusive rights, right? And then they get a unique advantage as a company because they're the only one that get to use, they're the only ones that get to market this blockchain technology, proving that they have high quality meat. You get money to go prove this is possible. In addition to money, you get people who are very knowledgeable about the industry that are personally interested in your product. So it can be mutually beneficial. And what you have to do as a startup is you have to very clearly communicate how this benefits everyone involved, and then manage the relationship. Okay? So how do you create the interest for a strategic alliance? Make sure that your partners know exactly how they will benefit, and also be transparent about what you need, what you will get in return, whether that's money, access, information, data, whatever it is that you need. How would you create a interest with financial return? I think it's pretty straightforward. You show that you're going to make the investor money. But don't just say that. You need to be able to explain how you make the investor money. And that's where I used this term exit, or an exit strategy before. The investor is going to want to know, are you going to sell your company? Are you going to grow it and pay me profits, dividends? Are you going to try to go public and sell shares of your company? Maybe you're going to choose to ask for a loan investment. That's another way to get your money back, is you can just pay the money back plus the interest of principal. Okay? Social good. If you are going to be pitching in getting the interest of the audience, the judges, that are interested in a very specific type of social good, they probably are experts in that area. Let's say you're talking about green energy. You're probably going to be talking to someone who knows a lot about green energy. So this is where, if you have that type of audience, you can be very specific about how much carbon dioxide you will reduce in the air, how you will reduce the emissions from cars, and be a little bit technical and be able to talk at their level of what social impact you're going to have. Be technical in the area where they care about, and then, because you only have a limited amount of time, that means you speak a little bit less about the financial return. Okay? And the fun. If someone is interested in the experience of being an investor on board and helping you grow the company, well then, on a one-on-one conversation or in a question and answer session, explain how you really want a mentor, you want someone to bounce ideas off of, you want someone that's going to be a part of the process, and explain to them how they are going to have a good time or an enjoyable time or an interesting time at the very least as they are helping you grow the company. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, so next we're going to talk about the criteria. So this is what I was given by Mary that you will be judged upon in a couple weeks from now as you're doing the demo day investor pitches. 1/3 of your points will come from the business model. 1/3 of your points will come from customer validation, and 1/3 will come from execution and design. I didn't ask Mary, but I'm fine with sending you all this presentation. So I have my email address on the last slide. You can shoot me an email and then I'll send it. You already get the presentations, great. Okay, so this is the breakdown. You have business model, how you're going to make money, customer validation, how do you know that customers are interested in buying your product, and execution and design. More specifically, this is, I also got from Mary, this is what the judges will be handed. They're going to have to answer for each one of your presentations, how does the team plan on making this a successful business? I believe my interpretation of this question is that means how are you going to be making more money than you spend? That's essentially how you create a successful business. Eventually, you will need to be making a profit. You'll need to be making more money than you spend. So have you been able to clearly explain what it is that you sell, how much it costs, how much you're going to be spending on marketing, how much you're going to spend on growing your company, and how will you make a profit? Some companies take a year, 2, 3 years to make a profit, but you need to be able to clearly explain what that path looks like. How are you going to make your business financially sustainable? Have you thought about, either solved or identified problems regarding your competition? Do you know who does something similar to you? You probably have already heard this, but one of the worst things you can, if an investor asks you a question, who is your competition? One of the worst things you can say is, oh, I don't have any competition. It's false. And if it's true, it probably means you have a terrible idea. So it's a red flag if you say there's no competition. So have you thought about who is your competition? Have you thought about how to scale? Meaning, how do you grow your company? How will you take your company from having 5 customers to having 50 customers, to having 500, to having 5,000? Have you thought about that? How will you be acquiring customers? In my structure slide where I talk about the way to organize your business pitch, the pitch deck, there's a slide called channels. So how are you going to be channeling, how are you going to be acquiring customers for your product? And the revenue model. How are you going to be making money? What exactly do you sell? One big issue I've seen countless times, probably on at least 1/3 of the presentations, the pitches that I've witnessed and judged, is we get to the end of the pitch, and the first question that the judge asks, or the investor asks, is, what do you do? What do you sell? Okay? I want to encourage you, greatly encourage you, make sure that that is not a question that you get in the investor panel. Make it as clear and as simple as possible what you sell. And for pretty much every company I've been in, that's been the most difficult part of the investor pitch deck, of making a pitch presentation. is taking all that you know about your company, taking all that you know about the industry, taking all that you know about the problem and how you might solve it, and making it simple. Making exactly how you will solve the problem, very simple and clear, and then what someone pays for. Do they pay for a subscription? Do they pay for a single product that you hand to them? Do they pay for a meeting? What exactly do they buy? And that's in the question, what's your revenue model? Next third of your points go to customer validation. So it asks, are the teams building something that people actually want? Obviously, you can't just say, yes, of course people want this. I think you've had a training already about customer interviews or problem interviews and customer validation. So this is the time where you would provide some data. What did people say? How did they prove it, right? Have you heard about the mom test at all? Or
Ask your mom about your product.
yeah, because your mom thinks you're beautiful, she thinks your products and your business is beautiful. You want to ask for something difficult in return. So hopefully by the time you get to the investor pitch deck, you will have already proven that someone is willing to give you something in return for the value you're offering. They're going to give you money, they're going to give you their email address, they're going to give you time, but it's not just going out and saying, I sent out a Google form and 75% of the people clicked the button that said, yes, I'm interested in your product, right? That's not going to be treated very well by the investors. They're going to want to see, well, I had 30% of the people that I spoke to actually pay me $5, right? That's something that's much more valuable. So we're trying to figure out how you can prove validation. How well does the team understand their customer and their customer's needs? Did the team get out and talk to customers? Again, just what we were talking about. If you have some stories, some actual stories with an actual person's name that you spoke to and that you convinced to use your product or buy your product, use an actual name and an actual story in a short version. And then what is the value proposition to the customers? Who here can tell me what does value proposition mean? What the customer gets in return? Okay. True. Let's see. Anyone else?
The company mission, but in short, talking, short phrase.
A short phrase about the company's mission?
Yeah.
Could be that. Could be that. Anyone else?
What's different from competitors?
How are you different from the competitors?
It's the solution which links the company very different from its competition.
The solution that you provide that's different from the competition. Yeah? Yeah, I actually agree with all of those. The way that I usually frame it is, how do you make a positive impact on your customer's life? So the solution, and we'll talk right now, the next slide about the structure of your presentation. The solution is usually answering the question, what? What do you do? What do you do? Value proposition is answering why is that important. If you can't answer why is your company important, why are you important, you're not going to be very interesting to invest in. Because if you're just another answer to what, if you're just another solution on top of many other solutions, then people will get bored of you. But if you can answer why are you important, well, I don't only provide customers with information about how the meat was produced. That's answering the what question. What do? You provide customers with information about the value chain of meat production. Why is that important? I give mothers a sense of security when they open up a package of meat, they fry it, and they give it to their child. I help that mother feel secure that she's taking good care of her children. That's why you're important, right? And it's usually emotional, it's usually part of a story regarding your problem, but everyone should make sure that that is a part of your customer validation. Do you know why customers are going to care about your product? Don't base it on your own assumptions of why you think that you have a good product. Go out and talk to people and make sure that you are solving a real need that has a positive impact in someone's life. Okay. Next one, execution and design. Have they established a minimum viable product? Have you already heard about minimum viable products? Who here has an MVP? Several people? Okay, good. Does it deliver a compelling impact? I think that's the definition of an MVP. Is it a product? Kind of, right? I would say, for that question, have they established a minimum viable product? If I was a judge in the audience and I was trying to give you some points based on that, I would say, have you proven that you can solve some aspect of the customer's problem or not? The validation, which is the earlier question, is, are they willing to pay for it? The MVP question right here is, can you solve the problem? Right? So you need both. But here it's talking about, do you have some way of solving the problem? Now, you might not have software, you might not have an application that solves the problem, but have you created a way to solve the problem in a simple and viable or useful function? Does your MVP create a compelling and captivating user experience? So, I'm not a huge fan of that question. I'm not sure how the judge is going to determine if you have a captivating user experience, but that will be more subjective based on if the judge likes what you made, if they think it's pretty or if they think it's actually useful. I don't know how the judges are going to answer that question. And then, were they able to demo something functional? So this is probably where they will give you bonus points. If you actually have software, you actually have a working application, you have something technical, if you're making something that's hardware. Do you have a piece of hardware that looks ugly, but it works? Right? If you have a piece of hardware that looks beautiful and works, that's even better. But this is where probably some teams will get bonus points based on, have you gone from a paper version of your MVP or a verbal version of your MVP, and you have something tangible and physical to hand to people. Okay? All right. Now we are going to get to the structure. How do you actually begin preparing your pitch? You will have 5 minutes to get through the whole pitch. The hardest part about the pitch, as I said before, is clarifying what you do in a very simple and short way. Being able to talk to someone about what you, some people call it their baby, what you love, what you're passionate about, and limiting yourself to 5 minutes. And we'll get to this at the end, but the way that you do that is you practice, practice, practice. You just have a lot of practice, making sure that you communicate everything that you need to, everything that's most important to raise the interest of your potential investor within 5 minutes. Then you'll have about 3 minutes for question and answer. And that's a time where the judges or the people that will be in the jury, they will ask you things that they didn't understand about your presentation, or maybe they had an idea for your business, and they'll ask you a question if you've thought about something or not. And during the repetiție that will be next week, I'm going to pretend to be one of those jury members, and I will ask questions, and you'll have to answer the questions. And then at the end, there will be a selection. And at a later time, Mary's going to explain what are the prizes and who gets the prizes, how many places there are. But there will be, during the day, everyone gets to do a 5-minute pitch. After you finish talking, after 5 minutes is up, you'll be cut off. And then you will have 3 minutes to answer questions from the judges. And then at the end of the day, there will be selection. Okay? This is my recommended structure. You don't have to follow it. This is the order that I typically use. Sometimes I have 12 slides, sometimes I have 9 slides, sometimes I have 15 slides. So it really depends on you. But what you'll see here is that I try to talk about the flow or the story of why my business should be interesting to you. And like I said before, you have to know what are the interests of the investors that are in the room. So my encouragement to you is talk to Mary about who's going to be in that room, figure out why they would be interested in your specific business, and then create the story, create the flow. To start, you're going to want an opening that's going to make someone sit up and pay attention to you. There are dozens of tactics of how to do that. Many of them are getting old and boring. So my best advice is to try to just come up with something creative. What other people will do is sometimes people will, they'll ask a question to the audience. If you do choose to start by asking a question, my recommendation is ask a rhetorical question, meaning don't ask something that you have to wait 10 seconds for people to respond to. Ask a big rhetorical question like, if you're doing something that's going to be reducing carbon dioxide emissions, you can say something like, doesn't it suck that there's a big hole in the atmosphere and we're all going to die, right? Everyone's going to answer, yeah, it sucks, right? So don't ask something like, who here has driven previously in a fully, what are those cars called? Battery-powered car. Who here has driven in a fully battery-powered car? And then it'll take 5 seconds. Some people won't know if they're supposed to answer the question. They'll raise their hand. Some people won't raise their hand. It gets really awkward, right? So ask something that's rhetorical if you're going to ask a question. In your opening, don't introduce yourself. You will already have been introduced by someone. Just get up there and start presenting. In your opening, you could present a statistic that is interesting. 95% of people that eat meat are afraid that they're going to die from the chemicals that might be in the meat. Something like that, right? Shocking statistic. You can start by telling a story. This is one that I usually use. I'll take a picture of someone who has used my product or a picture of someone who has suffered the consequences of the problem I'm trying to solve, and I talk to them about this person's problem. And it brings, from the very beginning, a very human aspect to the pitch that you're making. If you want, we can talk later about different ways to open up. Then, I'm recommending that you very clearly explain who are you solving a problem for, who's your customer segment, and how do you solve that problem. Usually that is best done on one slide. Who is going to use your problem, your product, who's going to be benefiting from your product, and how do you solve their problem. Okay. Then you talk about the solution. This is how you are solving. How are you solving their problem? Okay. If we go back to the question, who, what, how, why, the second slide or the beginning of your presentation, you're going to want to answer who. Who are you talking about? The next one, you're going to answer the question what. What do you do in order to help that person? And then I recommend the next slide after that is your value proposition. Why is that important? Take it from a big picture. There are all these people that are suffering from this problem. A little bit closer in, we're going to be helping in this specific way. We're going to solve this person's problem in this specific way, and then make it very poignant, personal, emotional even. How are you creating better life for that specific person? What's the value that you are offering that specific person or that specific company? Then after that, talk about your revenue streams and your costs. So how do you make money? What does someone actually buy? Make sure that you answer that question. What does someone actually buy from you? And it's good to be able to talk about how much does it cost you to make that thing. You only have 5 minutes. If you decide that you don't have enough time to really talk about your costs and how profitable you will be, my recommendation is that you write that down or you know that information so that you're ready to answer that question if it comes up from the judges. How much does it cost you to make your product? How much are you selling it for? Then, I recommend that you talk about your market. How big is your market? Talk about who are your competitors that are in that market and what is your unique advantage. How can you uniquely solve this problem? It doesn't necessarily mean how you solve it better than other people. Maybe your product is slower, but how are you unique in the way that you solve this problem? Why will someone be particularly interested in working with your product or your company versus your competitors? What's your unique competitive advantage? Be careful with this. One of the downsides to these types of pitch competitions is you get a lot of very different business models that have to be judged based on one criteria. I lost several pitch competitions because I communicated truthfully that we have a very limited but important market, and our market size was something like, I want to say it was like a 5 billion euro market. I was very specific about who we're going to be helping. The person that got first place had a business that was in a 400 billion euro market. And when I asked the investors, why did this person get first place, why did we get second place? The answer was, well, because they have a bigger market size. I'm happy that in your judging criteria there wasn't a question about market size, but you still need to explain what it is. And my encouragement is that if you are honest and transparent about how you came up with the answer to how big is your market size, it's going to be a good first step when talking to your investors. They're going to know that you're not trying to lie about things, you're not deceitful and trying to blow up the numbers much bigger than they actually are. If you can clearly communicate a very specific, maybe small, but specific market that is interested in your product, and you give them a real number, in my opinion, that's much better, it's much more honest than saying we're going to help 500 trillion people in the world that are going to die if they don't get our product. Be honest, be realistic, and be calculated. Know how you came to those numbers. Then talk about your channels, which means how are people going to know about your products? Are you going to go through Facebook to advertise? Are you going to acquire customers by having a stand in grocery stores? Are you going to acquire customers by walking in front of people and presenting your product to them, face to face, word of mouth? Who is on your team, and what are the professional attributes of the people on your team? Do they have certain experience? Do they know people from a certain industry, and you can bring insider knowledge to that industry? Do you have, do you have previous working experience at a related company, and therefore you can bring management expertise, or you've already raised money, you can bring business expertise to the business? Why is your team unique? And how do the members of your team contribute to your future success? And then the last thing. I've said many things are the most important, but this is up there as being one of the very, 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 very important ones that you cannot leave off of your pitch deck, no matter what pitch deck you're doing. Actually, I would say no matter what presentation you are doing. Always have an ask. The audience should know how they can respond. There will be, I assume Mary, you can confirm this, there will be people in the audience that are not in the judging booth, right? There will be people just listening to the presentations. Maybe what you need are users. Maybe your product isn't ready for market, maybe you don't really have a great chance of getting you money. In your ask slide, you can ask people to volunteer to be a user. You can create a little short code, or you can put up your email and ask people to volunteer to be a user. If you need money and you're ready for money, ask for a very specific amount of money and tell people what you're going to do with money. If you need a connection to a meat producer from Germany, say, we are looking to meet EU meat producers specifically from Germany. If you have a connection, let me know. Possibly one of the judges know that person. Possibly someone in the audience knows that person. But in the end, you will benefit, right? Be very, very clear and specific about the ask slide. A couple keys, and then we're getting to questions here in just a couple of minutes. So, things to keep in mind. Make sure that you keep the presentation simple and clear. You have a limited amount of time, and when I make my presentations, my tendency because I love the products that I make and I love the businesses that I'm working in, my tendency is to try to speak really quickly. But by using more words, by telling more information in one presentation, it doesn't mean that you have a better presentation. You need to be able to hit all of the important topics, but my encouragement to you is that you would structure the presentation in such a way that you can be very simple, clear, and paced. Not slow, but be methodical in the way that you are presenting. If you speak very quickly, people will drown out, they'll forget things, they'll be confused. But if you have a story, and you take pauses in the story, and you highlight certain points that are most important, and you give people things to remember, the most important things about your business to remember, and again, that's if you know what the investors are interested in, and you make sure that they remember those things that they're most interested in, then you can come away with a successful pitch. If you just cram in as much information as possible, or you use diagrams that are very complex, you will probably not have the same impact on those investors, the people in the room. Have a story and a flow. I mentioned before that I usually use at least one story of a customer in every pitch that I do. I try to talk about if this person is experiencing this problem and I solve it in this specific way, this is how their life is impacted, this is what they pay me for, and this is how I will find more people like her to grow my business. Okay? So try to find a story that will have a flow, or it will continue throughout your whole presentation. And try to connect each one of the slides. In the structure that I just gave you, it's already built up with a certain flow. You open by making someone interested in you. You talk about specific people that you're going to help and the problem that you're going to solve. You talk about how to solve it, how their life gets better, what they pay for, how many people like that are in the world, how you're going to find those people, the team that's going to serve those people, and what you need in order to get there. It has a flow already built in. You don't have to use this flow, but if you start and you say, we are a company that scans the freshness of fruit, people are going to pay $5 for our scanner. There's a market of $100 billion of people that are looking for scanned fruit. I happen to know someone who has this fruit disease, and she would have loved if she could have purchased a scanner. I talked to her once, she told me that she was interested. I have a team of people that have a background in fruit freshness certification. I need $10,000, please give it to me. The story kind of bounces all around, and you lose the interest of the investor. They're trying to understand, well, where are you going with this? Why are you telling me this information? So try to make sure that it's very clear and that it sounds like a natural conversation. If you were about to go stand in front of someone who's interested in your business, try to have a conversation with your investors. Just tell them, how do you help people? How do you make money? How are you going to grow the company? What do you need in order to grow the company faster? Have a conversation with the investor, have a flow. Images, or an image, a graphic, are better than words. So try to limit the number of words that you're going to be putting on the screen. Be very concise with what you're saying. You have a very short presentation. If you have a lot of information, the investor's not going to remember it anyway. If you have a little bit of information, statistically, there's actually a greater likelihood, if you have little information and you highlight a couple of numbers, and it's the only thing that's on the page, it's more likely that they will remember that number than if you give them a lot of information, they might forget all of it. Okay? Plan your question and answers. So there are many people that I've worked with that put hours and hours and hours of preparation into their pitch deck. they think that they've answered every possible question in their pitch deck. They get in front of the investors and they finish the pitch, went great, and then there's an investor question that comes up and they're stumped. They don't know how to answer that question. And they try to make up numbers, or they try to make up a story, and they fumble around with their words, and they take 3 minutes to answer the question, and it wasn't a very good professional answer, and then they're out of time, and they're asked to get off the stage. It creates a bad last impression. It creates a bad last memory in the mind of the investors of who you are. My encouragement is try to think through what are those questions that are going to, if you were an investor, what would you ask? What would you be unsure about? Most likely, your business doesn't have everything figured out. Most likely, you have some things that you just don't know. If someone asks a question that you don't know, say, I don't know, next question, right? It's better to take the attention away from those points that you know are weaknesses. Take the attention away and try to focus your time on questions that you do have an answer for. So if someone says, how are you going to grow from 5 to 20,000 clients? You can say, well, we have an idea. We're going to do this, but honestly, we haven't figured that out yet. That's something that we are working on, and I will report back to you once we have more data. If someone asks you, how many of your customers have unsubscribed from your service? You can say, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm going to go back to my computer as soon as I step off stage. In the coffee break afterwards, I'm going to get you an answer. Okay? Just take that question off the table and then move on to the next question. And lastly, practice. When I get up on stage and I do pitches, when I did this one for Seed Stars, I practiced the 5-minute pitch about 50 times. What's the math on that? It's a lot of hours. I'll put it that way. I put many hours into making sure that I knew what to say. I didn't memorize it. It was a little bit different every time, but I knew how to organize the flow of the story. I knew how to answer questions. I knew where I was going to be moving on the stage. I started at a certain point on the stage, and I actually stood in a room and I practiced where I was going to be moving. I knew I would start here on stage, and then when the problem happened, when I got to the problem slide, I would walk to the side and I would make a point at the person's picture that was right here. And then when I got to the solution slide, I would step forward and I would open up the solution behind me, and I would engage in eye contact with the investors, plan the whole thing out. And that only happens, you only get to really think about how you're presenting if you practice a lot and you already know the content, you already know the material. I think Roman is going to talk a little bit more about this later. But the point there, make sure that you practice, invest time into knowing your material, and that you're comfortable by the time you get on stage. You're going to be nervous. Everyone is nervous. I am always nervous when I go pitch. But you should be comfortable with the material. You should have nerves because it's a big opportunity and it's an exciting event. Not because you don't really know what you're going to talk about. Not because last night you put together the pitch deck and you don't really remember what is the next slide that's coming. Okay? All right, so now time for questions. I've got about 10 minutes for questions, I think. About 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll hand it off to Roman.
Like we can make it 15 if the questions are interesting.
We'll see. Maybe no one's interested in asking questions. Do we have any questions?
Yes. Is it possible that in 5 minutes to include the prototype, maybe the investor will want to see some trying the MVP or something, how it works? And
What type of prototype do you have? Is
for
it
example,
software? Is it hardware?
For example, for software as SIS, software as a service. If it is possible to connect to this prototype and the
Good question.
investor will want to see how
Yeah.
of course, how I resolve this problem.
Good question, good question. And this is something that when Mary gets back into the room, we'll follow up on. Demo days, the idea of a demo day is usually that you're going to demonstrate your product, which is a very different type of pitch. It's a different type of presentation than an investor pitch. Investors are usually interested more in how are you going to find new customers and make money. Demo days are usually for how does your product work. Mary, are there multiple presentations? Is there a demonstration of the product and an investor pitch deck? Or is there one presentation?
One presentation.
One presentation. And they should focus on the investor presentation, not demonstrating the product, correct?
Yeah, and but
Yeah.
both, because on this day we will have startup area as
Out here?
Yeah.
Yeah, good, good.
So
So,
very important.
like what we had previously.
Yeah, it will be a startup area. After that, in parallel, will be one-on-one session with investors. On evening will be just demo day.
Good, okay, so my recommendation is that you do not demo your product per se. You don't spend a minute of your 5 minutes showing how your product works unless that is critical to understanding what you do. There are some products that if you talk about a problem and a solution, it doesn't make any sense and you really do have to show your product. It's rare, so I would need to know more about your product. But my recommendation in general for people is that you would explain very specifically who had a problem, explain how you validated the problem, explain how you validated, proved that someone's willing to pay for your product, and how you're going to grow the business. And then you can tell people in the question and answer section, if you're interested in seeing our product in action, please join me at the booth right outside. And you will have a little booth right here where you can show your product, you can have people click through, okay? So we can follow up afterward and I can hear a little bit more about your specific product. My recommendation, don't demo during the investor pitch. Encourage them to meet you outside for the demonstration.
Can I add a little bit
Yeah, go for it.
to your answer? So there is no rule on how you demo a product, if you do it or not. You adapt to see if it fits. What I loved, one of the pitches of Matt, is he pitched with the product on himself.
Yeah.
I tell more about that because that's a beautiful example of demoing a product during a pitch.
Yeah, so we had a product that was called a baby carrier, and we had the world's first smart baby carrier. And when you use the word baby carrier, not everyone understands what you mean. Sometimes people thought we were talking about a stroller, sometimes people thought we were talking about a car seat. And so I actually wore the baby carrier, and I showed people what it looked like. And so that was kind of our demo, but I didn't show the application, I didn't show the process of it working, but I did show the product itself, because it was visible and tangible. Yeah, that's Jetta. This is the CEO, founder of TAP. You can go click on Jetta. She's the brains behind the operation. She's the one that's still running the company in Amsterdam. So that was an example where she's pitching there. Right now she has a mic on and she's demoing her product, but she doesn't talk about it. She just allows people to see it. So real quick, just to finish up this, sometimes what I've seen is people have a video playing behind them that shows how the product is used. They don't talk about step-by-step how to use the product, but they will be talking about the solution, they'll be talking about the customer, and in the background, if you're interested, you can watch someone clicking on different screens and using the product. That also works.
So you said the baby moon carrier is the first one in the world?
It's different.
From what we knew, yeah, it was. Yeah, there were other ones that were it was smart, yes, so that's a good point. It's the first smart baby carrier in the world.
So in this
Meaning
case,
it had health sensors that were inside of it collecting information about the vital signs of a child and leveraging that data for money.
so the question you said, at the pitch to have no, like, there is no competition. What did you answer?
Yeah, great question. This is actually a very good question. So in that situation, we were the first with a very unique technology. However, people were solving that same problem in a different way. So what I had to prove is that there is an interest in solving this problem. Now what people were doing is they were getting out their phone and they were logging manually health data into their telephone. They would then write information on a piece of paper and show that to the doctor about the health of their child. They would, every 10 minutes, be curious and making sure that their baby is still breathing. And so then they would open up their pouch and they would look to make sure the baby is still breathing. They would have other tangible physical ways of solving the problem. What we presented was a better, more unified, simple way to solve the problem smartly. Yeah. There was another question back here.
I want to ask, what to say in the opening? Just 2-3 words about product.
What type of business do you have?
E-learning courses.
E-learning courses. Okay. And what problem do you solve?
The problem with the time, with the cost, it's common to go on the internet for a little something, not go to the training or something.
So I would say that you have a couple different options. I'll give you a couple from the top of my head, and Roman can probably give you more in that next presentation.
We're going to teach them on the Saturday, so
on Saturday? Okay, so I'll just give you a couple quick ideas, right? And I'll act them out. So you have a big picture of a boy that has a book in front of him. And you say, Jimmy spends 14 hours a day trying to find the information he needs, and he goes to bed never finding the answer, right? So you present a picture of a kid, something that's tangible, and you say, a statistic, 14 hours a day, problem, he never finds the answer. You start a story, right? The other thing you could do is you could ask a rhetorical question. We already talked about that. So you can say, how much of us growing up never knew why the sky was blue? Well, studies show that this and blah, blah, blah. So you ask a rhetorical question that would be relevant for everyone in the room, right? Another thing you could do is you could, how to open, you could have a screenshot of, let's say, Coursera. It's a big online e-learning platform. You can say, do you know why Coursera is terrible? Because it doesn't customize information for your local region. Something like that. Something powerful, interesting, right? You immediately take on the giant, Coursera, right? And you talk about how badly they are, and it frames the context for, you know what? Yeah, it would be nice to have information relevant to me. I don't want to use Coursera. I'm interested in hearing how they're going to solve this problem. Okay? All right. Next question. Still got a couple minutes, if there are questions.
So, basically, it's okay to make the opening of the pitch actually with the final use of your solution.
It's okay, like Roman just said, you can do whatever you want, right? So there's
and
no.
from there, you come with the story.
Yeah. I would put it this way. Let's go back to one of the first slides. What's the goal and what's the purpose? And the purpose is to increase interest. If I know that the people in the room are interested in meat safety, I should probably, in my opening, be able to present something about the terrors of the current situation regarding meat safety.
The what?
Like how bad it is, how terrible it is, right?
Situation.
If you want to be negative, you can also be positive. And you can say something about dreaming about a world without disease or something like that, right? And you can paint the picture of what life will be like. But you should be able to focus the first thing that you say on whatever is going to increase the interest of the people in the room. If the people in the room are really strictly interested in making money, you might want to open up and say something like, the meat industry receives the most subsidy investment money compared to any other food production industry in the world. I'm here to explain how you will make money from that industry. Something like that. I would be careful with that because in the context that you will be in the next couple of weeks, many of the people that are volunteering their time to be judges, they are actually going to be interested in social good. It's people that want to see the Moldovan startup scene grow and develop. So I wouldn't be too heavy on, I'm going to make you money, I'm going to make you money this way, I'm going to make you money this way, and then you're going to make this much money, and then you're going to multiply it with this much money. I've been in rooms where people only care about money. And for good reason, because their job is to take other people's money and make it more, and then give it back to other people. So they're really only interested in making money. If I'm talking to those people, I focus on the money question. Okay? And I very clearly explain from the very beginning how I'm going to make some money back. All right? That's all the time that I have, but I have a pretty simple email address, matt@rudder.md. So feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any questions. Like Mary said, I'm going to be around next week, and we're going to go and do a rehearsal for all of your pitches. I'm going to pretend like I'm a judge. I'm not going to take it easy on you. I will cut you off after 5 minutes. I will give you tough questions, and then I'll give you a little bit of feedback on how you can improve. But you don't get to stand up there and start your presentation and say, oh wait, I forgot, let's restart the timer, let's go back. That's not going to happen next week when I'm in front of you. We will prepare you by pretending it's the live event. We might actually be on stage. Yeah? Can we be on stage?
You can try.
Maybe we'll be on stage. And we'll pretend like it's the actual event.
Repetiție.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you guys very much. Hope to see you guys next week.
Eu vă sugerez să fiți în contact cu Matt pentru că a avut roluri diferite pe contexte și evenimente, de la mentor la foarte multe activități, chiar și în calitate de investor a fost implicat într-o... Mai ești în companie care...
Da. Noi așteptăm
Ok.
să reintroducă.
Și chiar în calitate pe poziția de jurat a fost la unele activități, respectiv are background în toate domeniile, așa că... Da. Vă sugerez neapărat să apelați. Eu acum o să chem pe următorul speaker, trainer. Da, deci este vorba despre roman. Roman propriul. Este un prieten foarte bun al comunității noastre, al Asociației TIC, al TEC-ului, atât prin background-ul pe care îl are reieșind din experiență, prin experiența sa, spre exemplu, că a participat la un program foarte similar ca Startup Academy, în programul Launch Track Rockstart, powered by Tech-ul, care a fost anul trecut și a fost coordonat, apropo, de către soția lui Matt, de către Caterina, ea a fost colega noastră. Și, respectiv, Matt a fost unul dintre beneficiari.
Roman.
Da, roman. Respectiv, ceea ce vreau să vă sugerez este că în oricare moment, în dependență de atitudine pe care o manifestați, voi puteți să fiți cei care ulterior o să prezinte, o să se manifeste activ în comunitate și o să poată să ducă mai departe conținutul pe care îl acumulați aici. Să fiți promotorii antreprenoriatului în Moldova și nu numai. Respectiv, Roman a avut experiența în diferite activități. Ultimul său succes împreună cu echipa sa a fost să câștige Startup Weekend Deci, dacă mai multe detalii, poți să spun chiar.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary, for the lovely introduction. I'm going to put my laptop. I really like using my technology. Okay, hello everyone. How are you feeling? A little bit more energy! Like I'm the last speaker, then I'm letting you home. Okay, so my name is Roman Druk. I work as a project manager at the UX designer and also a mentor in public speaking at Digital Agency. But that's not the interesting part. So, why am I qualified to be in front of you and why I'm qualified to take 30 minutes of your life? So I've been in multiple competitions. I've been at TechCrunch, Startup Weekend, Creative Business Cup. I've traveled around the world thanks to the startup industry. So, and was it last week? Yeah, I won Startup Weekend. So I have been like in 10 startup competitions, and that's some baggage experience that I have with me. And I came here to show you and share with you what I have learned from pitching startups. So the goal for you specifically is to learn what I do and how I do it, so you can take whatever you like and use it in your experience, in your presentations. Your goal is to ask questions. If you have a question, please raise a hand whenever in the presentation you want, but please ask a question specific to the topic I'm talking to. And of course, all the knowledge I give you, you must use it and do something with it. You're going to do specifically something on Saturday, and that is when I and that will help you do and practice your presentations. So again, if you have a question, please raise a hand. That's a usual problem here in Moldova. People are really afraid to ask questions. This is a dialogue, so please be part of it. So let's go to the key things that you should know when you're making a pitch deck, a presentation pitch, whatever you call it, whatever you want. First of all, you have to ask yourself, what is the goal of the presentation? A, do I want money? B, do I want sales? 3, do I want partnerships? And that. So first thing first, ask why are you doing the presentation in the first place? Are you planning to win? Are you planning to get some money? Are you planning to get somebody on your team? So when you do that, then it's more easier to do the presentation itself. Time. When you're in startup competitions, this is the thing that you care most, because you're always limited in time. You may have a ton of information you want to share, but you're always limited with time. It's usually, right now, it's 5 minutes. A few years ago, the startup competitions gave you like 7 minutes for a pitch. Now it's usually 5, sometimes 3. Are they going? How much time are they going to have?
5.
Okay, they're going easy on you. My previous ones before Startup Weekend had only 3 minutes. You're like, that's super tense. It's super hard to squeeze thinking. So whenever you go to a competition, always ask, how much time do I have? You take that time, you take out 10% of it, and that's the actual time you have. The other 10% are the reserved time that you have for the pause, the thinking something goes wrong. So if somebody tells you you have a 5-minute presentation, it's actually for 30. Not 5. The story. The boring thing that you can do with your presentation is just a mashup of information and present it. Today, the good presentations are the ones that actually have a story behind it. As Matt told you, you should always have somebody, a character in your presentation that experiences that specific problem. For example, in a Startup Weekend, I was the actual person in the presentation because I had a problem. I have health issues, and I needed a solution to track my health so I can know what is happening to me at any given time. So include somebody in your presentation that is actually telling the story. What is the problem? How your solution solves this problem, and what are the benefits? And this is something I want to stress. I have seen a lot of times that teams are really bad at picking the person that is pitching. There's a thing called ego, and it's a thing that actually is a problem for most teams, because usually it's like this. I'm the person in charge, I'm going to be the one that actually pitch. Or I'm the person that came up with the idea, so I'm going to pitch. And this is a really irrational behavior. You always have to ask yourselves in the team, who is the best person to deliver the pitch? Who has the best English knowledge? Who has the best understanding of the actual startup? Who can control his emotions in front of the audience? Who is the right person to do it? My favorite example on the local market is Venture or Saltage, depending on which name you know. The CEO of the company never pitched their startup at any occasion. The person doing that was, at the beginning, she was the COO, Senior Officer of Operation, Lisa Terzima, and she was the actual person pitching because she knew how to do it properly. The CEO was doing his job, she was doing her job because she's perfect at that. So please, whenever you're pitching, pick the right person for that. Don't let the ego get in front of you. So let's get to the types of pitches. This is a tricky thing, and usually you learn this by time. So I have been in 3 startups, so I have learned to do a bunch of them. So what are the usual ones? This is the ones you all should have. This is the elevator pitch. It's the 40-second pitch about your startup, that you just say to a person. So does anybody have an elevator pitch about their startup? They should have like one-liner, right? What is your one-liner? Who can tell your one-liner? Like how many startups do we have here? Okay, I'm not gonna push you. So
6.
6? Okay, 6 startups. Okay, on Saturday you have to have an elevator pitch. Why? Because you're gonna be here in front of everyone, and everybody's gonna come to you and ask you, hey, what does your startup do? And you have like 15, 20, 30 seconds tops to explain to them what the hell you're doing. So elevator pitch is usually a very short representation of who you are as a startup, what problem are you solving, what is your solution, and why you're interesting for everybody. Like, do you have an innovation? Are you targeting a very big market? You have an amazing team, maybe. This is on you. So we're going to work on this on Saturday. And I'm going to give you some also presentations that explain to you how to make an elevator pitch and a presentation pitch. Next one. A competition. Yeah.
Why is it called the elevator pitch?
Oh, it's called an elevator pitch because it came from a tradition. When investors and company owners came into a hotel and they had to pitch their company to the investor when they were in an elevator that went from the first to the 13th floor in 30 to 40 seconds. So that's why it's called an elevator pitch. That was the time given. Competition pitch. This is the ones that I'm really good at because each competition has their quirks and things. A competition pitch is usually designated to win. How you construct a competition pitch. You put in front all of the information that makes you look really good. That is not the type of pitch you will be doing. So usually when you make a pitch that makes you win, you put on everything you have that's good in you. You make a good traction. You already have customers. You conducted a ton of research, so you put everything in front of everybody, what is best about you. Just so people think that you are really good. But that's not the type of pitch you will be doing. A sales pitch. So, whenever you're in front of the audience, you must always understand why are you specifically doing this pitch. Remember the goal. So a sales pitch is usually when you're in front of a big audience, like 300, 400 people, and you have the opportunity to sell them your product. So in these types of presentations, you actually focus on the benefits of the products. You put in extra slides that specifically sell very good your product. Next one is a partnership pitch. Same thing, you're in front of like 50, 100 people. These are people from different industries, and some of them are really people that you need. So in these types of slides, you focus on why it's so good to be in partnership with you. Maybe you help them make a lot of money. Maybe you help them reduce tax. Maybe you help them in a very different beneficial way. You always have to present why it's so good to partner with you. Next one, investor pitch. That's the one that Matt was telling you about, so I'm not going to stop on this one, that's relevant. And this is one of my favorite things, the tailored pitch. So what's specific about this one? These types of pitches usually come after like 3 or 4 months of startup activity. Then you actually start understanding, hey, I'm going to TechCrunch. I'm going to read about how usually people pitch there. So I'm going to tailor my pitch specifically to the audience that's going to be there, because they have a specific type of mentality, they have a specific type of talking, understanding information. Or a tailored pitch can be to a very one specific person in the audience. So you might go to a competition, and you might participate there as a competitor for the, I don't know, like $10,000 and stuff like that. But if you know that there's going to be one very important person in the room, and you really want him, and you don't want the money, you make the pitch tailored specifically for that person. That's how you do it. Because if you know that in the room there's going to be free investors that really invest in startups like yours, you forget about the competition and you tailor the pitch specifically for those free investors. Because it's not about the winning, it's about getting the money. Or getting the audience. So the basic structure of the pitch. This is the basic structure that you get at competitions or at basic startup events. I'm going to go really fast about it because the important structure you got from that. This is just for your knowledge. So the intro slide. The intro slide, you have your name, you have your tagline, boom, that's it. You open with this one. Problem. Very short, very concise. Usually it's the 140 characters rule when you present a problem and a solution. So you must always make your problem seem as simple as possible. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Don't try to make it really hard to understand. The simpler it is, the better it is. For example, this is going to be a very gruesome explanation, but a lot of children are dying because they don't get the medicine in time. Very simple, very straight to the point. Everybody understood what is happening and what is the problem. Solution. We make custom airdrop deliveries to regions to save children. Very again, straight to the point. People understand how you're solving the problem. The simpler it is, the better it is for you and for the audience, because the main point for them is to understand. Solution. Again, very simple, straight to the point. Never, never, ever explain the solution or the problem. Just say what it is. The market. Always say what is your market, how big it is, how big of an audience you have. Business model. Again, don't make it super complicated. So startups usually like to make it like really complex. We're going to charge these types of customers if they use the service for this long, we're going to charge them this much, but if they use within a specific feature, we're going to charge them this much. Then we do that. If it's SaaS business model, software as a service, just say SaaS business model, one type of account, second type of account. Done. You specify how much they pay, that's it. Competitors. Always speak about your competitors. Matt covered this in the Q&A. There are two types of competitors, direct and indirect competitors. Direct competitors are the ones that are doing kind of the same thing that you are. For example, Facebook, Одноклассники, Contact, they're both competitors in the same area. Indirect competitors, for example, for a restaurant would be, for example, you're a restaurant, your direct competitors are other restaurants, but also you have, how do you call it, food shops, like supermarkets, vending machines. They're indirect competitors because they also give you food, but in a different way. So direct or indirect. So never ever say that you don't have a competitor. You're going to be immediately scrutinized by the judges. There's always a competitor in your market. So please research a lot. Go-to-market strategy. This is really important. You must explain in this slide how are you getting to the market. How are you going to get your first sales? How are you going to grow your company? So very short list. For example, in our startup, it was connecting, so very short intro about our startup. So Vigo.me is a personal healthcare companion. We help you keep track of your health and your doctor appointments. So how we went to the market is we told that we're going to go and talk with influence doctors so they can promote our product. We're going to go to conferences would focus on health and promote her product there. We're going to sponsor different conferences as well. And the obvious one is Facebook ads. But I didn't put that, the Facebook ads, I didn't put it on the slide because that's an obvious one, but I'll still talk about it. Next is traction validation. So they had the validation traction, right? So how much is this all? Like 3 months, 4 months?
All program was 3 months.
So,
but for validation, we had a specific module. Yeah.
So you should already have some numbers on how many customers are potentially interested in your product, how many interviews did you do, or maybe you already sold some. That should be already amazing. So if you have those numbers, put them there. If you don't have them, how much time do they have? Like 2 weeks?
For what?
Till the presentation before the judges.
From now, yeah, 2 or 3.
2 or 3. So we have 2 or 3 weeks to get some traction. That's really important. Next, team. Investors don't invest in the idea. Investors invest in the team. So you always have to showcase who is your team. The best photo is you united as a group. Like, if you don't have a photo like this, you should make one. As startup competitions like a startup weekend, you don't have that much time or energy, and all of you look like really tired. So you usually pick the best photos for Facebook and you put them there. You, on the other hand, have the opportunity to actually make a good photo of you as a team, put it there, and explain why you are the best team to do it. Always talk about it. If you have, for example, a startup in health, always say, we have a doctor with 12 or 15 years experience in our team with this specific area. If you have an expert on the team, on a specific area that your startup works on, you always have to mention that. Our CTO has an expertise of 12 years of development. You always mention the team because, and if you say that we previously worked on a project together that succeeded, then it's an amazing thing to say. So always talk about the team because investors, yes, they invest in how productive is your idea, but they usually more are inclined to just in a team that is really good and united. Demo. About the demo, this is a tricky thing. It depends really on how much time you have and the situation. So for example, in a startup weekend, I was planning to catch all of the judges and show our app to them before the competition starts. But I asked the facilitator of the event, can I do that? And he said, no. What happens if I do? I disqualify you on the spot. I said, okay, that's a good reason, so I'm not going to do that. But if you have this opportunity, Mary, you should specify this as well. Do they have the opportunity to talk with the judges before the competition? If you can't talk with them, that could be a very good thing. That could be a very good thing because if the judges already know what is your demo about, it will be way easier. It really depends on how much time you have. If you have something working, I really recommend showing it to the judges. If you're now, you have to ask Mary later on tomorrow, Mary, can you specify a list of rules on how the event is going to go on, but are you going to have electricity? So you have to have a list of what you need. And ask Mary, hey, am I going to have internet connection via cable or whatnot? Be prepared. Always ask. Always ask the facilitators what about your needs, because they can't know everything for you, so you have to always ask what do you need. So, let's get on. So, any questions till now? No questions. Okay, let's talk about you, the speakers, the ones that are actually going to pitch. Does any of the teams actually know who's going to pitch from their side? Please can raise your hand so I will be talking specifically to this people in the eyes. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, sweet. So I have a separate presentation on how you actually do public speaking, but we're limited in time, so I made the most important things you actually should know. So first and uttermost important thing, you should always smile when you enter the stage, when you go out on the stage, and when you talk with the audience. Because this always makes a good connection with the audience. Always smile. Even if you have a missing tooth. You should always smile. This is like a pleasure. So always have control over your body. Like a good speaker always has control over everything. That's why I use my technology, because I'm sure on it, because I use my pointer, because I'm really control freak when it comes to presenting. So I usually use my technology. I have control over my body, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking. So a good presenter always has control over everything he does when he's on the stage. And that is also relevant to the slides. My practice is I usually make the slides by myself, because when I do the slides, I actually remember them better and I practice them. So if you have a designer and he really wants to make the presentation very beautiful, you make the slides, you make the text on them, and you give the designer to actually just make them beautiful. But the structure, the slides themselves, the information, the text on them, you do that. You just give the designer the opportunity to make it beautiful. Passion, yes?
Yeah, just to add on control, please, this is very important, okay, for speakers, this is like exclusivity, to have their own technical, but please have the presentation in all formats, online, on stick, sent to us as organizers, just to be sure that you have presentation in any case, because it
something might go wrong. Something might go wrong. Mary will specify to you everything you need to know. So, but yes, having a backup of your presentation on another laptop or on Google Drive is a really good thing. So yes, that's a really good bonus. Passion. So this is a thing that the speaker should be having when he's on stage. When you're presenting something that really hurts you, you always have this passion, because I really, for example, my most topic that I bash a lot is education in Moldova. If you ask me something about education, you're going to hear this voice that's really enthusiastic, and I'm really ready to bash everyone that's making the education in Moldova really bad. That's something you should have as a speaker. You always have to have that passion, how really much you care about these terms. This shows your dedication. How far are you willing to go? Because if you go in front of the audience and you say, well, hello everyone, I'm here to talk about public speaking. This will be a very interesting presentation and knowledgeable for every one of you. This doesn't show jack. You always have to show the passion you go when you're presenting this topic, because this is your baby. You invested 3 months into it. You have to show the passion you have for this project. Next. This is my personal thing and beef with all of the presenters. When you're presenting something, you have to show expertise and confidence. If you don't show that, I won't trust you. The same thing applies to juries. If they don't see that you're confident in what you're saying, you're mumbling, you're kind of not sure, like, I think this works like this. I think the market size is this. Never do that. Always show confidence. Even if they're the judges, you're the expert in what you're talking about. There was a really interesting moment at the start of the weekend in the Q&A. One of the judges, so one of the things that you have to do in our app, you have to scan all of your medical documents. And this will take some time, so we have all the information in your app. And one of the judges asked me, hey, so can I ask you, why do you think people will actually put and scan all of those medical documents in your application? Why do you think they'll do this? I was really kind of frustrated with the question, and I asked him directly, do you have a chronic disease? He was a guy like 50 years old, and he might have had a chronic disease, but I strictly asked him with a specific tone, do you have a chronic disease? He replied, no. Well, I do have one, and I'm an expert at this, and I'm ready to scan all of the documents, so I have them on my phone. Because I was the patient, I was the expert in that situation. So you always have to show confidence and expertise in what you're saying. Don't mumble again. So what else do you need to know? So pitching is an art form. So we always have to experiment with pitching. How you do it, when you do it, in what circumstances, how much time you're given. You try it with style, without style. So always practice and experiment with your pitches because this makes you a great pitcher. Rehearse. I can't stress it enough how many people are so cocky and thinking that I'm a great presenter, I'm going to improvise in front of the audience, and they suck. Always rehearse your presentations because if you don't, it's going to bite you in the ass and you're not going to win anything or you're not going to even promote your product idea or whatever. Always rehearse your presentations because this defines how good you're going to be in front of the audience. You heard Matt, he rehearsed 50 times one 5-minute presentation. If we multiply that, it's like 50 minutes multiplied by 5, that's, oh damn, that's 250 minutes. That's straight. 250 minutes, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 or 5 hours of people just rehearsing. That's a lot. That's education. That's what you should do. So you do that until you're sure about it. Ask for feedback. If you're at work, you ask somebody from your company, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I want to ask you for some feedback. I want to show you a presentation of mine. You ask your mom, hey mom, do you have like 5 minutes? I want to show you something. You ask your friends, hey, do you have some free time? I have a startup pitch and I want to practice. Can you give me some feedback? So you practice and you ask people for feedback. The less you know them, the better the feedback will be because people that are your friends or your moms, they're always going to say, your presentation is so good. You're so good at it. Good luck with that.
Not always.
Not always, not. If it's not always, then you have an amazing mom. But most of the time, still, relatives, friends, family, they always try to like sweeten up and say, oh, you did such a lovely presentation. And you ask them, what is my presentation about? Oh, I don't know, I just think you said it lovely. Oh, like, come here, present to each other, you like present to other teams here. On Saturday, you'll have this opportunity to present to each other. So present to each other and ask for very strict feedback on how you did it. Then you'll know if you actually made a good job at presenting. This is a thing like, this is a personal view. Couple presentations when you have 2 people presenting at the same time. They usually end up very bad and messy. Only if you practice, if you have synergy with your other colleague doing a couple presentation, only then and only then you can try and make it. I tried it twice. Both times sucked so much. I lost 2 startup weekends, but hackathons because of that. So it's better if you have 1 person, because when you have 2 people on the stage, the possibility that one of them is going to go into what is happening, I forgot to say something more probable. So my personal recommendation, 1 person pitches, that's it. If you're really invested into it and you're really sure, you can do a couple presentations, but I don't recommend that doing it. So, a couple of myths about pitching. So, pitching is a talent. No, it's not. Pitching is a skill. Public speaking is a skill. The more you practice, the better you are at it. So please practice pitching as much as you can. At home, when nobody hears you, in your mind, in the transportation, just talking about different topics, going to Toastmasters or making a presentation for students from your school, anything works. The more you do it, the better you are at it. So please practice. Universal deck. This was a long dream of mine, like one pitch deck for all of them. Like you have only one PowerPoint presentation and it solves all of the problems. It doesn't exist. I tried making one, I really tried like a bajillion times doing this. It doesn't exist. Because do you remember how many types of pitch decks we showed last? Like investor, sales, partnership, competition pitch, elevator pitch, a ton of them. So forget about the universal pitch, it doesn't exist. What does exist, what I call the mother pitch. The mother pitch is all the information about your startup in one pitch deck with very detailed information. What I did, I took the pitch deck, and because I have all the information there, I made a copy out of it, and I started shortening everything. So I have a specific, like a competition pitch or something like that. My process of making a pitch deck is usually looks like this. I put all of the information in the pitch deck, and then I start cutting and simplifying it as much as possible. My product is the greatest on the market. Don't you know that already? Like, these are people that are really delirious in their startups. Like, they think that their product is the greatest on the market and they even shouldn't be pitching. Well, if it's so great, why you're still here? So never think with the mentality that your product is the greatest. Always be open for feedback, for criticism, because that's going to happen eventually. So always be like structured and understand how good you actually are. Never think that you have the greatest product. So what's under the hood? So these are the things that rarely people talk about, and I'm going to actually share. This is really personal experience. What I do before presentations. So this is called the power position. One of the things that you struggle as a speaker is being confident in front of the audience. So one way to do that is to boost your testosterone level. And to do that, you put yourself in a power position. This is called the superwoman, like Wonder Woman position. You put it like this, and you stay like this in the bathroom for 2 minutes. It's a scientific fact that if you stay in a position like this, your testosterone level actually rises and you feel more confident. There's a TED talk about it. You can actually learn about it. If you ask me on Facebook, I'm going to send you the video. Other ones, like, they look like this. We're on camera. Okay, I can show that. So you can show, you can see that. No. This will be really inappropriate. Okay, one for men. Like usually, yes, done in the bathroom. So what you can do, you can pick a room and just say like this for 2 minutes straight, and you like feel how your confidence rises. Yeah, they look really funny, but they are. So these are the basics one. The one sitting and the one with the Wonder Woman. Like this, like your chest, front, and you're sitting like this for 2 minutes, and your testosterone level rises. And then you feel more confident. Proper response to questions. Matt already covered that. I just want to add something to it. So, responding to questions is the trickiest thing you have in a startup competition. Rule number 1. Answers should be short. Don't go explaining, interpolating, or making a description of the answer. Try to make them as short as possible. That's the key thing, because the shorter the answer is, the more questions you can answer to the judges. And that's really important because they are interested to know everything about your startup. So make the answers to the questions really simple. What do you say? How do you answer to the question? Well, you're asking for $100,000. How much equity are you willing to give for that money? What do you answer to that question? Any ideas? Yes?
We'll speak later.
Yes, that's the proper answer. You're now tell on stage how much equity, percentage of the company, you're willing to give for the money you're asking. You always respond in a very polite way. Thank you for the wonderful question. I'm really willing to discuss that over coffee, if you're really interested in our proposition. You always have to be very polite. If there is a question you can't answer, as Matt said, always say, thank you for the wonderful question. I don't have the answer on me right now, but if you approach me on the coffee break, I'll have an answer for you. If there is a question that you are not capable of answering, but your colleague is in the audience and you know he's confident and he can answer it, ask him to answer it. But only if you know that the answer will be really short. Again. So questions, again, you're going to practice, we're going to give you hard questions, and you're going to practice responding to them. Keep them short. I can't stress it enough. Looking at the slides. I have my fair share of different scenarios when I pitched. So this is my favorite one when I have a monitor in front of me and I know which slide I'm actually showing to you right now. But there are some situations when you don't have a monitor right in front of you. And you actually have to kind of pick in and see what is on the slide, because at start of weekend, we didn't have a monitor in front of us, and I didn't remember by heart my presentation because 54 hours is really not that much. So in these cases, I usually take advantageous positions to actually look at the slides. So like the first, the second, the third slides, you can remember them. Then what happens is, well, if you look at our market valuation, we have 3 different instances. You see what I did? I actually looked at the slide and actually showed them, like, if you look at the slide, I make like a gesture to that. And I have an excuse to look at it. Never do something like this. Well, on our slides, there's the market valuation is something like this. Never do that. Never put your butt in front of the audience. That's a no-no, a big no-no. So always, if you're picking the slides, be sure to be like in this part of the stage, and you can look at it for a glance. And you can also like do it like this when you're setting, and then you take a small peek with your left eye of what's on the slide, and then you continue talking. So this is something that should be really discreet, and always be prepared to actually do it, because not always you will have a monitor in front of you. Cheat if given the opportunity. This is what I call fair cheating. You only can bend the rules, but not ignore them at all. So again, you should always ask, so you don't get penalized, like for the thing that I told you with the jury. You should always ask the organizer, can I talk to the jury? Maybe the startups will not know about it if you talk with them beforehand, and then you can have an advantage on them. So if you can have any advantage, and nobody's going to suffer because you had that advantage, always use it. If it's not in the rule book, if you asked the organizer, is it a problem if I do this, then you can always use it. So this is one of the examples how you can bend the rules, like Windows stuff now. Really good song. The example is, sometimes when you're out of time presenting something, the timer stops, but nobody tells you that you have to get out of the stage. If you're given that opportunity and you need to talk, continue talking. Don't stop yourself from making a presentation. Like, there are like 10 keywords that you have to say, and the time is out, and the person responsible for the timing didn't see that the time has actually stopped. You continue talking. You don't stop. You actually continue talking. That's it. Only if they stop you, then you have to be a good sport and stop talking. Backup slides. This is something you can always have to ask the organizers. Can you use backup slides? Those 10 slides I showed you, those are the basics that you always must have. The backup slides are for the Q&A. If the jury asks you, hey, we asked for $100,000, what are you going to spend them for? Oh, I have a slide for that. And you just go to the backup slides because you have an explanation, what do you actually need the money for. Somebody asks you, what are your milestones? Where are you going to be in 1 year? Oh, I have a slide for that, for your answer. And you give, so that for the questions, you can make a slide and use it as a backup slide. You don't show it in your actual presentation. You use it in the Q&A. Will they be allowed to have backup slides?
Maybe.
So ask Mary for this, because this is really good.
Why not? That would be a good idea.
Yes, it's really good if you have backup slides. 80% of the population is visual, so when they see something, it's way simpler to understand what you're actually talking about. So prepare the backup slides. Mary said you can use them. Ask her again before the competition, just to be sure, and prepare them. I'm just going to repeat it for the sake of repeating it, and just to be sure, if you're on a startup competition, never, ever, ever show it like that. It will eventually crash at some point. I have seen it multiple times. Live demos crash. Only if you're in the position like you are, like you had 3 months to make a demo, then you should be actually sure that your demo won't suck and it will work properly. One more thing. 2 days, 3 days before the competition, don't make changes to the project. Something might go wrong. And always have a backup of a working project. Again, this is a simple thing to follow. These are not restrictions. These are just recommendations. No animation, no videos, no sound, and always test. This ensures that you won't have many problems to deal with in your presentations. Why no animations? Because maybe the organizers will take your presentation, make a PDF out of it. Maybe, just maybe. I have 2 occasions when that actually happened. So if you need an appearing animation, I'm going to show you how I actually did it. If you need like an appearing animation, do it like this. You make separate slides. So this is technically all one slide, like 9, 10, 11. This is one slide, but it's divided in 3 separate slides, so it's like an animation. This is how you actually make it short. Don't use videos because there could be a problem with the computer, there could be a problem with sound, something might go wrong. Internet, yes, might as well internet, put that into it. And no sound, again, something might go wrong with the audio system. If something always goes wrong, so the best bet is to make it flawless. And always test. There is always a test on your presentations before the event. So make sure to not skip that, so you're sure everything works fine. One last thing I want to show you. This is about working on your, about being nervous in front of the audience. This is how I treat being nervous in front of the audience. So this is why you shouldn't do videos. Where's the stick number? The remote. Okay. Let's see if it actually works.
I realized this when I was watching the London Olympics, so a couple of Olympics ago. And I was annoyed by how all the journalists asked all the athletes the same stupid question. Literally, everyone. Were you nervous? Or are you nervous? Whether it was before or after the event. Every single time. And every single time, all the athletes gave the exact same answer. No, I was excited. No, I'm excited. Every single time. These elite athletes had learned to interpret body stimulus. What are the signs of nervousness? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. What are the stimulus for excitement? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. They had learned to interpret what their body was telling them, not as nerves, but as excitement. And the reason the journalists said, were you nervous, is because they would be nervous. Athletes would never say that to each other. They say, that was exciting. So I tried it. I did a little test with myself, right? I'm on a plane. We start hitting some really bad turbulence. I go, and then I say to myself, literally out loud, this is exciting. And I was fine. and I was fine. So I do it a lot now. When I find myself getting nervous, I say to myself, this is so exciting, and I'll explain the reason to myself why. So, like an actor, you don't get nervous when you go on stage anymore, but occasionally you do. So I get to go on stage a lot, and I don't really get nervous much anymore, but I was going to present to 3,000 chiefs of police right in the middle of all this police brutality hullabaloo. And I got really nervous because the stakes were really high, you know? And I was literally getting nervous backstage. And I said to myself, this is so exciting. I have an opportunity to talk to a group of people who can actually affect change in this country. This is really exciting. Now, I could have said the same thing. I'm so nervous. I'm about to talk to people who could. But the interpretation was exciting. Just change the narrative. It works brilliantly well.
So this is how I also treat from this on. Excitement and nervosity versus excitement. So you're going to have the opportunity to present in front of judges. And it's really exciting. So treat that as excitement. Okay, that will be all. If you have questions, I'll be really happy to answer them. So, questions, please. Yes.
Is there any average number of images that should be presented on the pitch?
Not really. If the image can say whatever you want to say for words, then use the image. Images are always better than words. Just be sure that they're appropriate. Like, there's one slide I really love. It's called the smile slide. It has, I'll show you, not in front of the camera, what it usually says, so you understand how much I love actually that image specifically. But again, if you have the opportunity for an image, always use an image. You're in front of the audience, so their focus should be on you and not on the slide. On the slide, you should have only like the most important thing to know. For example, the market size. You should have 3 numbers. The total market we're addressing, the niche we're getting into, and the amount we really want to get in the next 2 years. Only the numbers, that's kind of it. Other questions? Questions, guys, girls. Don't be shy. Yes.
What's happening if, for example, you have the pitch in the last? I mean, everybody's already tight and...
Everybody's tired?
Yes. For example, if you are the last from the line and
well,
you understand that they are already full of information and don't understand, don't listen to you. How to manage this situation?
Well, what can help you is making a very interesting entrance. I was the fourth in presenting, but I still made an interesting entrance. I entered with a big map of all of my health documents, and at some point I just threw it on the floor, and everybody really got into it. Another thing, you can really enter with a loud voice. I would do it, okay. Like, you can start really powerful with your presentation with a really loud voice, but you have to be able to do it. For example, whatever. I'll turn off the microphone. Actually, can you turn off the microphone just not too loud? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are today here at TechWell. If you just do something stuff like that, be sure everybody's gonna listen to you. Like a powerful entrance with a voice is really good.
Voice is good when you're a boy. You have so loud voice.
Yeah. So, or you can do something really strange, but I'm not sure. Like, one thing that I did, but it wasn't a pitch, it was a presentation. What I did was I just got in front of the audience with a cake. In a really nonchalant way, I just approached to the table, and I was eating it while I was going there, just like the entire audience was silent in like 10 seconds. I finished my cake and I thought, oh, now I have your attention, thank you. So you can do whatever you want, just as much, it just has to be appropriate. Other questions? You should ask the questions now, because on Saturday we'll be the one asking questions, and there are going to be a lot of them. So, any more questions?
Should you have other questions, please prepare your presentation through the structure that we will send. The presentation of Mete and Roman. And please be prepared, because on Saturday we will just change your presentations, not to stay from the start and to prepare all your slides.
Yeah, you must have on the elevator pitch, because this is the 30 seconds that you will be always telling to all of the people that will be asking you, what is your startup about? The shorter it is, the better it is for you. 1 year I was at TechCrunch, thanks to I think they made it possible. And the second day we had a booth. I was literally non-stop talking about the startup for 6 hours. And at some point I understood that I made my elevator pitch from 30 seconds to 12 seconds. Just because of how tired I was of talking that much about the startup. So the shorter it is, the better it is, but you have to have it on you. And second thing, you have to have the investor presentation pitch on you as well, because we're going to test that. Any more questions came to mind to somebody? Okay then, we'll have a jolly good time asking you questions on Saturdays. Thank you very much.
Ok, deci, totul este clar. Pregătiți prezentările în cea mai crudă formă, dar ele să fie gata. Deja mentorii care o să vă chemăm o să vină și o să vă ghideze ce și cum situații de adaptat. Noi o să șorim prezentările. Dacă Roman o să ne transmită și o, spre exemplu, un pitch de vostru,
do we have like 5 minutes? I can actually do my pitch from Vigo.
Yeah, would be
So
great.
do you want that?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember that good, but still, and I don't have my map, so I'll use this. So that'll probably provide a little bit.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's okay if we print our presentation and give them to see on the paper. Maybe someone from them will see all the information. You want to make some notice?
I'm okay with digital. Just have it on your laptop. You can show it in whatever form. Wasting paper is not that
I'm
good.
showing it on the desktop.
Yeah, on your laptop, desktop, your mobile phone. You can have. I use Google Slides and Slides.com to make my presentations because they're digital and they're on the internet, so they're easy to use. So imagine this. This was my actual file. It's this thick about one disease. So imagine this is my file with my health notes. I'm going to go very fast my slides just to what it is about. Yes. Yes, I do it this fast. When you practice, you actually get that feeling that you know everything about your presentations and you do it very fast. Okay, can you actually time me? I'll give you this time, just to be sure.
All your gadgets.
Yes, I have everything on my phone. So, let's start when I start. Okay. Hello, my name is Roman and I represent Vigo Startup, your personal healthcare companion. So the problem looks like this. This is my usual problem as a patient. I always have to keep track of my health, and this is just one disease. This is my heart disease. And it usually looks like this. So, and there are a lot of other people that have this specific problem, and they have a problem visiting doctors on time. So, during this weekend, we made 60 live interviews. We have 20 emails of interest in our solution, and we have conducted a survey where 60% of people are not satisfied how their health is tracked. So, we also tapped with people from different countries, and we found the same problem in 10 other countries. We are really surprised that in Ireland, people are also having a problem with tracking on paper.health. So we made a solution, Meet Vigo, your personal healthcare companion. How he helps you? He helps you keep all data from doctor visits. he makes suggestions based on your health dynamic, and he notifies and plans where you have to go and to which doctor. So who's our target audience? Our first target audience is the early adopters from the age of 24 to 40 years old. They're heavy planners, they use a lot of their mobile phone and calendars, and they have at least one chronic disease. These are the people that's going to be the first 5% of our market entry. And the next adopters will be the future or current mothers that are planning to have a baby or already having one, because they also need to keep track of their health so they can share it with the doctors. This is a number, it doesn't seem much, but it represents the number of people at the age of 20 in Europe. And 1/3 of all people in Europe, age 20, have one chronic disease at least. That is a total of 250 million people in Europe have a chronic disease. So in Moldova, we have, the market size looks like this. We have 60,000 users, potential users in Moldova. We have up to 54 million potential users in those 10 countries we found earlier. And this is the total market we're addressing, about $50 billion. So our business model is super simple. You can get a free account. You can track up to 2 doctors, for example, dentist and cardiology. If you want the full package and track all of your doctors, you pay €5 a month. So business growth, where can this lead us? In the future, we can have other variations. We can sell big data to research centers. We can make affiliate marketing for doctors and pharmacies. We can do business-to-business services and integrations with companies and pharmacy companies. So our competitors, the most important thing in applications like this at the moment is providing the most value with the user experience you have. So all of these competitors, they may be good, but they're really uncomfortable to use, and they're really hard to understand how to use in the first place. So how we're going to do it? How we're going to penetrate the market? We're going to go with influencer marketing from doctors, because we are the ones talking with their clients. We were going to go to offline events specifically based on health. And we're going to do branded sponsorships on conferences. And of course the Facebook ads, because they're kind of obvious that you do that today. So our team, I'm the patient. I'm a project manager and UX designer. We have an amazing UX UI designer with 3 years of experience in mobile applications. And we have 2 senior iOS developers. One of them is right there. Oh, 2 of them. Two of them, right here. So we already managed in these 2 days to get 3 advisors on our team. We have Olga Krylova, a senior image sonographer from Centrul Diagnostic German, Alexandru Miriuț, founder of Abilitarea Femeilor in Moldova, and we have Alex Burlaco as a machine learning expert, because we're planning to make this all work on AI in the future. In these 2 weeks, we have 2 beautiful announcements. We made a partnership with Alpha Diagnostica to test our applications in the next 3 months when we have the beta version of the application. And we have one company from Kazakhstan, B2C Consulting, that is focused on selling business to government and business to business solutions. So this is the first screen you actually see. It looks very simple as a calendar. So here you have on the top, you have your calendar with future and back appointments. So with the ones that are blue, these are the past appointments, and the pink ones are the future ones. So this is the visit timeline. This is like a history of your entire health. And you can see all of the doctors that have visited in the last time. And you can filter them by a specific doctor. And this is how you communicate with Vigo. You communicate like with a real human being, and he is your actual healthcare companion. Thank you. Woohoo! Woohoo! I was kind of sloppy, I know where, but like this was a presentation, so thank you. I hope you will cut me some slack. Okay, this is how you do a competition pitch. This is a specifically competition pitch. So I focused in the competition on providing what we succeeded in 54 hours. So we managed to find this real problem. Do all of this stuff in 54 hours. So we made 60 live interviews, we made 20 emails, we gathered 20 emails of interest, and we found a very interesting statistic. So this proves that we made a lot of work. This isn't as usual slide. This is a slide that emphasizes on the research we had. So we found 10 other countries that shared this same problem, and this is really important information for the judges because they see that we did our homework. So this is why this extra slide is here. This is the usual slide, and we specify how we help. You see that I don't immediately give all the information, because if you put immediately all of this in front of the audience, they'll start to read all of this, and you're going to lose them. So it's better to put one by one. First, keep track of all the data from doctor visits. Then that. You show them, and they understand. Target audience. You make a portrait of your target early adopters. So I think you should have covered that in the market analysis. That early adopters are the 5% audience that are really interested to buy your product. So that's what you specify, our early adopters. And then we said our next customers are going to be these people, future mothers. This emphasizes how big is the problem. This also emphasizes how big of a problem this is in people, because 250 million people, that's a lot. The market size, specific numbers that show that we actually made the research and how big of a potential this application actually is. Business model, really simple as possible. I really don't stop it here. I just say it's a SaaS model, free account, monthly subscription, we're done. That's not interesting. Business growth. This shows to the judges that we actually thought how in the future we're going to grow. Where is the potential of this project in the future? Competitors are trying not to, you put an X, Y axis and you say, on the user experience and the value experience, we're the best. Your logo should be there. Only there. Not anywhere else. Go-to-market strategy, how we're going to actually sell. Really simple as that. The team. These are the advisors. You should have advisors. I really recommend finding people that are advisors. You should put them and mention them in your presentations. This, for example, if you're a medical startup, but you don't have a doctor in your team, that's bad. But you can put an advisor on your team that is a doctor. So that's what we did. And this is what I called the trump card. Not actual trump cards. You have seen the movie Mrs. Sloan.
Yeah.
So watch the movie Mrs. Sloan, and she has the concept of the trump card. This is the card that you don't show to anybody, and you show it only at the end. And this actually kind of won us the competition because we made an actual partnership. Like, that document was not fake. That was a real document signed by the CEO of the company, Alpha Diagnostica. And that lead from Kazakhstan is actually a legitimate company, so I can prove that. So you never tell lies in your presentation, because if you tell them, somebody's going to find out about them, and you're going to get butt kicked. And the demo. We didn't want a video because we didn't have enough time, so we just used screenshots because this is the most foolproof thing that will work precisely. So that is our pitch. That's how we did it. Any questions? Maybe something else. Okay, thank you. Feel free, and we'll see you on Saturday.